One of the things, though, that I'd like to do is start with Ashwin. And why don't you just give like a real brief background on yourself, since nobody heard you speak, and then let people know that why they should ask you some questions. And I think you worked with Yugender on the Motiva project.
Right. Good morning. My name is Ashwin Venkat. I'm a senior principal and team lead for the advanced analytics group at Seeq. A little bit about my background. I started my career with Shell, working in the advanced process control group at Shell Global Solutions. Then went on to work at Valero and Chevron in roles spanning advanced control, real-time optimization, and advanced analytics. I'm a chemical engineer by education, but a control engineer at heart. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Okay, I see a question right here, so we'll start us off.
Yeah, Apostolos Georgiou, ExxonMobil. I have.
Could you introduce yourself too? Put your name and company.
Yeah. Apostolos Georgiou. I work for ExxonMobil.
Okay.
Right in the automation and process control area. I need to have a question, but let me ask a clarification for Merck. The valves that you mentioned that forgotten open in different batches and so on, are these valves under automation and process control, or are manual?
These are all automated.
So why they were forgotten open? If it's automated based on a plan how to operate the batch process, why these valves were left open?
So so we make changes to optimize, and sometimes there's unintentional effects to when you're trying to change and optimize your process, and you may detrimentally affect your process. And so
human errors, basically,
yes,
someone forgotten. Okay.
But from a design engineer perspective.
So my real question is for the others, not Linde or Motiva and so on, but the other people that they talk about we keep talking about data going from the plant, from the sensors up to whatever they go to the cloud, to all these things. And then they do all kind of magic things over there, data analytics and so on. How we move the data, then after you come up with this analytics, how you implement these results? Do you call the people, or you have a mechanism to move the model that you develop down to the edge in order to do a control or real-time optimization? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So yes, so we collect all the data and then actually go to the cloud. Why do we go to the cloud? So for example, you're running a machine learning, all that storage and compute needs, you may not be able to keep it in the on-premise or attached to the factory. That's why you go to the cloud, because of the elasticity.
I understand.
You get that.
What do you do after you do all your work?
Okay. So what do you do when you do a machine learning model? So you come up with the model to predict a problem. So in a machine learning, you have classification, you have you can actually classify and find out actually what is a problem, or you can predict a problem. End of the day, all these analytics are getting matured into a predictive or a prescriptive stage. So most of the things what you see in the dashboard is actually just descriptive, right? It's describing what's going on, connecting it, and visualizing it and showing it to you. The next level of analytics maturity is where you want to predict at the real time when you're moving a product from your one machine to another. Okay, this machine actually has to be pulled away from the production process because it's going to be faulty. So how do you predict that? So those predictions are a result of that machine learning process. That predictions will not be in the cloud, because as you can imagine, when I'm actually moving from one machine to another, the total turnaround time is less than 10 seconds or maybe 20 seconds. Within that time, the data is not going to cloud and then coming back and then giving you a visual alert like, okay, move this item to a different place. That's not going to happen. The result of that learning has to be implemented at the edge. So that's why you don't see a direct connect coming from the cloud, but the learning, the prediction APIs and the prediction programs, all of them have to be installed at the edge.
How you do that? How you install that in the edge?
So you have to create those programs and then write them.
Is it manually?
Not
Like
manually.
a person takes that and move it with USB and so on? That's how you do it?
No, I can explain you actually a little more detailed technical way. So how do you extract the data from an IoT thing? You're using a protocol MQTT and then take the data. So now the edge machines, most of them, let me explain it with a very simple example. You have a thermostat at your home, and when you are actually switching on and switching off, all of that actually can go to a digital twin in cloud and then come back and then refresh that state. Otherwise, say your thermostat has its own memory. So automatically, it doesn't have to be connected to the internet. It can actually act. So in your storage, what is attached to your edge thing, that's where the same program what is there in the cloud, you can have that in the edge itself. But in a very limited capacity, you cannot do an analytics there because that capacity won't be sufficient. You can actually, the result of that API, machine learning, the result of that API would be a simple formula-based program. That program can be installed at the edge and it can start predicting it. That wouldn't have come here because many of the companies are still at the very entering into prediction or, yeah.
I think, afterwards you could probably, I think Mahendra will stay around. So I think that you could probably continue this conversation. I think we can maybe get into some more details if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Does anybody else want to comment quickly on that or?
So I have a quick
Okay.
comment. So I think in general, at least our view is, the answer in some respects to your question is it depends on where your consumers are. And one of the things that, at least our philosophy is we like to get the results published to the consumer base. So we have what we call topics, and one of the things that does is uses the analytics that you may design, but publishes in a form that's easily consumable by your end user. So it could be simple visualizations, and even those have incredible value for the end user. Just knowing what are the 5 things I need to look at this morning. That's incredibly useful in our experience.
Okay. Do we have another question? Okay. Oh, we do. Right here. We have actually.
My name is Rohit Patwardhan, Saudi Aramco. Really enjoyed all the presentations. And my question is to the folks from Linde, Merck, and SunPower. Can you tell us a little bit more about the analytics and machine learning platforms you use specifically?
So it's really where you define the boundary around what's called machine learning, AI, data analytics, right, is a pretty broad boundary these days, right? And we do everything from simple to complex, as somebody else alluded to. Sometimes it's just simple visualization via dashboard. Sometimes it's much more complicated than that. And so I would say it's a variety of things. We have some in-house solutions where people are actually building stuff up from sort of core platforms like R and Python, and sometimes we do use some commercial solutions like Tableau. We use other things, right? So I think it's a bit of a kind of fit for purpose kind of approach that we have.
Anybody else? Anyone else like to answer that? Okay.
Yeah, still early days, and there's still tools in development, but similar to what Larry said, a mix of in-house and tools that are commercially available. We're looking at a lot of AWS tools right now. But in terms of visualization, all the things he mentioned.
Let me just, maybe just to add one thing really quickly to that comment. So one of our goals is not just to have solutions that the experts can use, right? People are professional data scientists per se or whatever. But we're trying to bring some capability down into the business unit, right? And so to one of the early slides, move people away from Excel if it makes sense. And so things like Tableau, like SPSS, like Alteryx, if you're familiar with them, those tools that have sort of more of a drag and drop approach versus having to write code. We are trying to target some of those things down to the, like I say, sort of the next layer within the organization, right, to enable some of those traditional business analysts.
Why don't we, Mahendra, did you want to comment on it?
Yeah. So we are using, actually, it depends on the capability. So the machine learning platform is actually, if you see it as a building blocks, architecture building blocks, you have a storage, which is like big data system, and then your machine learning. Most of the machine learning is based on AWS public cloud, what we have. And when it comes to visualization, it depends on the department. Some people are comfortable with TabView, some people are with ClickView. It's very opinionated. So we don't really enforce that. Yeah.
Ashwin, did you want to comment on that? Like about the tools?
Yeah, so I mean, I think our philosophy is really about empowering the end user. It's technology is great, but ultimately it comes down to the technology that you use, is that adding value to the end user. So it's really about that.
Yugender?
Yeah, sure. Ours is a little bit different perspective given our size. Some of these platforms don't scale to us like they scale to others. So we're looking for more packaged solutions targeted at individual problems. They are more proven at this point. As I said, it's a scale that limits us to what we can adapt.
Speaking of scale, I see a lot of proof of concept. I've seen more a few years ago. Now I am starting to see them rolled out, a lot of these solutions even across the enterprise. Does anybody want to comment on that? Have you seen that too? Like more scalable? Ashwin, I can see here.
Sure, I can maybe add some color to that. So I think Larry touched on that and the agile process, and we at Seeq we follow that same process. Just from a scaling standpoint, I think it's also what we've learned is it's really important to keep the innovation side separate from the scaling side. So we start with one, try to get that right, get early and continuous feedback from customers. So we involve customers in projects at a very, very early stage and get feedback. And so you do one, then do 10, then do 1,000. That's generally been our philosophy. And so we have an application that, for example, we follow that approach, and we have an application that I think has 6,000 users, 90 million tags. But again, I think getting there, it takes time and takes effort, and it's not easy. So.
Okay, we have another question, I think, over here.
Hi, Adi Doram from Relisoft. I really enjoyed all the presentations. I started noticing a bit of a theme there, and which was around having analysis-ready data be and self-service and getting that ready into the hands of end users. So my question really is more about adoption and what are you doing or what's worked for you to create a pull from the end users to actually adopt these platforms and these tools. Because quite often the reality is at every plant, there's tons of systems that are mostly underutilized. And there's been large investments, but there's not a whole lot of usage or to its full extent.
If I might start.
Okay, Gene.
What's the fastest way to adoption? Generate wins. Generate proof that there's value coming from these systems. Generate evidence that we're making people's jobs easier, better, or giving them a new tool they've never had before. And if they see the value in it, they will invest the time to learn the interfaces and the tools. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah. And
I agree with that, and I'd maybe just add to that ease of use can go a long way as well. I mean, if you design a tool that both adds value and it's easy to use, it just makes it really easy for your user base.
Larry?
Yeah, I just want to add, generating success is very important. Also communicating that, taking it to, wider audience, keep at it constantly. That generates pull from the end user side.
Okay. I think we probably our time's up for questions, but what I'd like to do is just ask our panelists and our speakers to just give you one or two key takeaways from the session that they think are important to the audience, based on some of the things we learned. And to me, I enjoy just seeing real live case stories because I just think it brings reality to what's actually happening out there in the real world. So if you would like to comment, Hendra, do you have something?
Sure. So last year when we were here, I think when we started the digital transformation journey in SunPower, our first goal was actually start small and then actually scale, fail fast and then learn and then scale, of course. But now the companies actually who have already started at some scale in the digital transformation journey, they should be looking at how this will scale for next 10 years or 20 years. And the amount of technology and the public cloud offerings and the open source technologies available, I think it is practical to think about to have a 10-year plan or 15-year plan right now without having to worry about actually like how much it would cost. So scalable, sustainable architectures are very important.
Ashwin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. So I think technology is great, but ultimately it comes down to is that what is adding value for the end user. I think that's really what it's about. And as Yugender said, I think when you do have successes, I've learned that being both on the operating company side and on the vendor side as well. It's really important to publish those successes. That's how the organization learns about those, and that's really how more people adopt the technology and are even aware of the technology. So I think those are two key pieces in my opinion.
Uganda?
Yeah. Yeah, this is my third ARC coming. Every time I go back, learning a great deal, talking to people, and learning from what they're doing. One of the challenges we have internally is creating this pull from the end user side. Even if you have successful POCs, like some of the I shared, how you create that pull from the other side. Listening to others. There seems to be everybody is feeling that. There was one particular session, winning the scalability battle. Basically, that was very enlightening to me that I'm not alone in this struggle, and learned some good things from the people who have been successful at it in their organizations. That's what I'm taking back to my own organization.
Gene?
My parting thought is if someone comes to you and says, I've got great AI algorithms, I've got machine learning algorithms, ask them very hard questions, because at the core of it, as hopefully I demonstrated to you, it's just basic statistics, or it's principal component analysis, or it's partial least squares. It's just applied at a large scale, and it's been rebranded as something great. But absolutely ask hard questions of anyone coming to you with that kind of stuff.
You took one of mine, right? Never be technology first. As I say, we don't talk about having a digital strategy per se, maybe within our team, but beyond that, not to the business leadership. It's about having a business strategy and how digital aligns with that, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is, as the guys talked about, really make sure you're building the foundations that you need to scale. If you don't think about that, then you'll just be disappointed in the POCs. And really rethink, it's time to rethink about what your organization looks like. How does it work? And how do you build an organization that is more adaptable to change?
Okay, well, I'd just like to thank our speakers. I think they were terrific. My takeaway is I do think that it's important to look at the tech. I do also think it's important to look at the technology, because I do think it helps to align people, and it does solve a lot of problems for people. And without the technology, some of these problems wouldn't get solved. And I do think it needs to give value as well. So you need to look at that as well. But I do think there's a lot of tools out there that make it much easier for people, and they help to kind of get your arms around where the direction, and you may have to change your processes as well. So in the people aspect. So I'd like to thank everybody, and I'd really, really like to thank our speakers, because I think they were terrific, all of them, every single one.